Welcome back to the show. From the soapbox to the stage, I'm your host, Bill Corbett. If you're just tuning in, I created this show to interview top speakers and get them to share tips for helping aspiring speakers, as well as those who've already stepped onto a stage, how to move from public speaker to professional speaker. It's not just about having speaking talent, it's also about incorporating speaking effectively into your business marketing plan. Today I'm interviewing Bob Steele, professional speaker, former CIA officer, and one-time U.S. congressman. He's the author of the new book, The Curse: Big-Time Gambling Seduction of a Small New England Town. Mr. Steele is a graduate of Amherst College and Columbia University and is the recipient of an honorary doctorate from Sacred Heart University in Connecticut. Welcome back to the show, Bob. In this segment, though, Bob, I want to talk to you about tips that we can offer speakers, and I asked you what your tips were that you would offer, and the first one you offered was interesting because I had not heard it before from other speakers I've talked to, and it's the Q&A. And you say the Q&A, the question and answer portion of the meeting is or the presentation is very important. Why?
Well, for me, it's very important, and it depends on the kind of talk, obviously, the speaker is giving. But my talks can go anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes. But there is then always a question and answer period because the subject always generates a great number of questions and discussion and sometimes controversy. So I might speak for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes answering questions and having a discussion. And usually the people who invite me ask me to build that in because it generates so many questions and it's such a contemporary issue. But I do believe that that it is especially important because you have to anticipate it. I have to anticipate it. It's a very important part of my whole presentation. You get to know what most of the questions are likely to be, although there's always a new one, and it can throw you or not throw you or whatever it may be. But it is what leaves the lasting impression. And here's an opportunity for the audience to go one-on-one with the speaker and see how really informed and knowledgeable about this subject the speaker is. So if I miss a question or flub a question at the end, that's the worst I can feel, because I feel that's the real test of whether I know my subject or not. And it is what leaves, I think, the lasting impression.
Now, do you have any suggestions or tips for when you're confronted with the question that's the curveball that's caught you off guard?
Well, I said the first suggestion I would have is stop for a moment and think about what you're going to say, because those are the dangerous questions. Once you start into an answer, it's very hard to move in a different direction. So I would say that is the first lesson that I learned, but I learned that some time ago. The other thing I would say is sometimes audiences are reticent about asking the first question, and then the questions will come like an avalanche. But if there isn't very quickly a first question, it's a good idea to suggest a question. It's a good idea to say, you know, one of the questions I frequently get is, and it gets the ball rolling, but I do consider it an integral part of my presentation.
That's great. That's a great idea because it allows us to prime the pump, if you will. Prime the pump for questions to come in, because a lot of people may be afraid to ask questions.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. That brings back a memory for me. I remember I was doing a presentation at Vanderbilt University many years ago, and an expert in my field said, hey, here's a handout I think you should use. Mm-hmm. I didn't spend a lot of time going through that handout, and I should have, which was my mistake as a speaker. And of course, everyone in the audience, and these are all medical staff, they all got this handout, and one person raised their hand and asked me a question about something that was on there, and I had no idea what it was. And that was, I'll always remember that one.
Well, you know, one of the other tips is do your homework. And that fits in that category. And by that I mean also understand as much as you possibly can about your audience before the talk. I mean, understand who you're talking to. Understand the organization that has invited you, because there are always good opportunities for tie-ins. And I think the audience always appreciates it.
And that brings up a good point, because when I wrote the book From the Soapbox to the Stage, one of the chapters I put in there is make sure that you have a good questionnaire to send to your client, and I encourage them to take a lot of opportunities. Tell me about the audience. Who's in there? What do they know about me? Where did they just come from at that when I'm going to be speaking to them? What can I do to have them walk away with, this was an awesome presentation? And in order to do that, you have to know a lot about them, right?
Exactly.
One of the things you also suggest is come up with an engaging title for your talk. I like that one.
I think that's important because remember, people who are coming to your talk may have seen a notice about it or read about it a day ago or 2 days ago or a week ago. So you're already creating expectations. You're already building their anticipation. To the extent that it is an interesting title, they are going to already begin to think of, in a positive way, about what you're going to say. So you've already put them in a positive mood, and I think that's important. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can say my subject is casinos, or my subject is big-time gambling seduction of a small New England town. Entirely different approach.
It puts a different spin on it, and I think one of the important reasons for doing that is because people are overwhelmed with so much stuff to get done. You got to get them out of their house or away from their office to come hear you speak. In order to do that, you got to make it worth their time by crafting, as you said, crafting a title that says, that's more important, I need to go to that. Yeah. Let's see, you also offer, one of your tips is establish your credibility by explaining your personal connection to the topic.
I think that's very important. The audience wants to feel that it is listening to someone who really has some expertise on the subject, who has spent time on it, has developed it, is as close to being an expert on it as they're likely to hear. And the second point I make is establish your personal connection to it. Why is this a subject you're speaking about? Why is this a subject you've written about? What is your special interest in it? Why do you know more about it than most people do?
And when we as a speaker get up on stage, sometimes things don't always go as planned.
Never do.
And never do. And I'm just wondering if you have any stories that you're willing to share, things that went completely wrong or caught you completely by surprise. And I mean, for example, like the fact that I did not know what was in that handout caught me completely by surprise. I've had technical glitches like power going out or expecting a projector to work and it didn't work, and our expectations are wrecked in that moment. Anything to offer?
Well, nothing as dramatic as I heard on one of your programs where the interviewee was talking about the fact that someone actually died in the course of his presentation. Not because of his presentation,
yeah,
but
right.
Nothing that dramatic has ever happened. But it's the little things. And this is where one way, perhaps a good piece of advice is in terms of, goes in the category of doing your homework. But when you come to a hall, go up to the lectern and look at it. Look at the lighting. Try to get a feel for the acoustics in the room. Can everybody hear you in the back of the room? Try to get rid of many of the glitches that can pop up, because you never know if somebody certainly is going to be a major problem in the audience. But I've had all kinds of things. I remember once I had a number of notes and I was going to use the notes. There was no lectern. Well, what do you do at that point? You can't stand there in front of everybody and read from something.
Right.
And if you don't know your subject backwards and forwards, you need those notes. Another time, the lighting was so bad and the lectern was so low, I literally could barely see my notes. These are just little things that are worth checking out before you stand up to speak.
Yeah, and it's the speaker's responsibility, as you say, to make sure you do that. One of the things that it's a pet peeve for me is when the speaker does not speak loud enough so the people in the back can hear them, but it's the speaker's responsibility to make sure you're loud enough. And that's why you say go there and take advantage of the acoustics and speak out loud.
And hear somebody else speak. Hear them introduce you, for example, and take note of that. I think that's important.
Another tip that you offered is preparing the basic 25-minute talk. You're talking about everyone is different, but unless you are an extraordinarily gifted extemporaneously speaker, I would suggest carefully preparing a basic 25-minute talk.
Well, I think if you really get good at delivering that basic talk, whether it's 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 or 30 minutes, whatever it may be, then you can cut out modules. Let's say you suddenly find, this is something that just happened to me the other day. I mean, I literally did find out that instead of half an hour, I had 15 minutes. Well, that's a crisis for a speaker. Yeah. And but if you've done it in modules, and you know the basic talk, and you know how you can remove this piece and this piece, you can do it without getting flustered.
Well, thank you so much for coming out, Bob. It was great to meet you.
Nice to see you, Bill.
And good luck with you on your book tour, and good luck with you with your taking this topic across the country.
Thank you very much.
On today's show, we met Bob Steele, a professional speaker, author, and business executive. His primary tip for us was make the most of the Q&A period, which should be thought of as an integral part of your presentation. It will contribute greatly to the audience's final impression of you and your talk. It takes a lot of courage to get up in front of others to speak, and it takes even more courage to do it as part of your business or marketing plan. And when you do it, it will set you apart from your competition and get you noticed by your prospects and your customers. So make the choice to be different from the rest. Now, I hope you'll join me for future episodes of the show as I set out to tap into the knowledge and wisdom of professional speakers who are willing to share the secrets for success on the stage. As Dale Carnegie once said, make the most of today, get interested in something, shake yourself awake, and let the winds of enthusiasm sweep through you with gusto. I'm Bill Corbett. I'll see you the next time on From the Soapbox to the Stage.